Robert, it's great to catch up with you, and it's very much catching up with you. Even at the weekend, it's a Saturday today, you're still a busy man.
Yes, I do a lot of community events on Saturday, and I'm literally about to go out to meet the chairman of Harlow Football Club, who I meet often because he's got some really exciting plans for the club. They're investing loads of money. We all know about the fantastic, I think it's 4G pitch now, which is lasting really well, and it doesn't matter how much rain we have, it's still a fantastic pitch. So I'll be interested to see what he's got to say.
So in February 2014, what are the typical issues? You brought up energy recently. Is that a typical issues in your postbag, or is something motivated by yourself?
Well, I had a constituent, a pensioner, who contacted me to say she'd had a letter from Co-op Energy to say that they were going to be charged £63 extra on her bill because she doesn't pay by direct debit, and she's always paid on time for 20 years, goes to the post office religiously, has never missed a payment. And I was shocked by this, so I rang up the co-op. I spoke to the general manager, perfectly pleasant bloke, and he said to me, actually, we're one of the lowest. And I thought £63 is a huge amount of money, especially for a pensioner. And so I went through every single company, and I think we wrote to about 34. We got 17 of them charge huge amounts of money if you don't pay by direct debit, and the average is £114 for people, and it goes up to £390 if you don't pay by direct debit. And what we've got to remember is that 45% of the country don't pay by direct debit. It's a huge amount of people, millions and millions of people. There's 1 million people in our country who don't even have bank accounts, and yet those people are being fleeced by the energy companies. So I've organised a debate. It's very hard to do, but I've managed to get 170 MPs, to be fair, from all parties, not just my party. Labour people have signed it, Liberals, even Scottish and Welsh MPs. 170 MPs. It's got more signatures than any other. I'm called a backbencher, I'm not an MP, but it's got more signatures than any other backbench motion in the history of Parliament, because it shows the strong feeling out there. It's going to be late Tuesday afternoon, early evening, my debate. I've asked questions to the Prime Minister about it. I had a letter from the Prime Minister yesterday who's promised a proper inquiry into what's been going on. I've met with the energy trade associations, and I'm meeting the Minister for Energy on Monday morning as well, because it seems to me it's fair enough to charge a small admin charge, but to fleece people and say you have to pay over £100 on average is just wrong. It's morally wrong, and energy bills are high enough as it is.
And do you take issues like that, A, because it's part of your constituents, but you see it as these are the joining the dots that really concern the people of Harlow?
Well, as you know, I campaigned for years to try and get petrol duty down, and at least the government, they cut it in 2011, they froze it, and that was a 2-3 year campaign not to put up the price of petrol through the tax. And amazingly they did it. We organised petitions and campaigns and debates and you name it. I was working really hard on that. The reason why I did that is because my local residents contact me about price of petrol and diesel all the time. It's one of the biggest issues in my mailbox, on email and letters. And also there was a story that McDonald's in Hastings started charging people to use their car park if you park more than a certain number of hours. And I said to the manager, why on earth do you charge people to park in? Never seen that before. And he said, because people were parking here overnight, sleeping in their cars. This is an incredible story. Sleeping in their cars because they couldn't afford to drive home after a day's work in Harlow, if they lived outside Harlow. In fact, there was a police officer who was sleeping in his car every night at the McDonald's car park because he couldn't afford, I think it was to drive to Ipswich. And that got into the national papers in the Sun. Shocking. And so that's why I did what I did on petrol. And exactly the same thing has happened with the energy bills. Because my constituents have contacted me about my local residents, my duty to represent them.
Do you think, though, that some people might look at stories like that, about the cost of living, and people might look at stories about food banks, not far from us, say at Tesco's and Church Lining, and say, some people might say, well, it's the coalition who caused that. So you're campaigning for things which actually your party caused. Do you think that's a fair accusation?
Well, people might say that, and there are all kinds of reasons why people are struggling, and I'm the first to say I recognise that people are finding it really hard. It's been incredibly difficult, but let's look at the economic situation. The country a few years ago was on the verge of bankruptcy. People may argue the reasons, they may say it's Labour, they may say it's the bankers, they can make their own judgment about that. But the reality is the country was on the verge of bankruptcy. If anyone disagrees with that, let me just give you one statistic. I don't like statistics, but one statistic is very easy to understand. We are paying £120 million a day in our taxes, not to pay off the debt, not even to pay some of the debt, just to pay off the interest of the national debt that the country owes, because the country was spending too much and borrowing too much. And so it's been incredibly difficult, £120 million a day just to pay off the interest of the national debt of the country. And of course the government have had to make cuts and so on, which have been uncomfortable and difficult. Who wants to do it? You don't get popular by making cuts. The government aren't stupid, but they've had to do it. And I think most fair-minded people understand that. But I would argue the government have done everything possible to try and help with the cost of living. And so let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, I mentioned just only a moment ago the freeze in fuel duty and the cut. They've also frozen council tax. Now it's sad that Harlow Council keeps raising council tax, but the government have given a grant to councils across the country in order to freeze council tax. They've linked the basic pension with earnings, meaning that pensioners on average are around £650 a year better off. But most importantly, they've cut taxes for lower earners. So 2.5 million lower earner people are out of income tax altogether. They pay no income tax. 2.5 million people across our country. 20 million people across the United Kingdom have had an income tax cut. That's a tax cut for lower earners. So whilst the government recognises, and I recognise that people are struggling, I would say that they're doing things to try and help, but we've got to do more. The issue with food banks is a really important one. The Harlow Food Bank is a really special place. I've worked there to pack boxes. I support them in every way I can, and I thank God that we have them because of what has been going on. But what you've got to look at is that food banks aren't just on the rise in Britain, they're on the rise all over. France and Germany have had a bigger rise in the number of food banks than we have, and Germany is supposed to be an economic miracle country. So if you look at this is something that's gone on all over the world. One of the reasons is because the price of bread and the price of food has gone up because of the world prices of the price of wheat and flour. There are very, very complex reasons for this. So just to say it's the fault of the government is wrong. There are huge reasons why there is a rise of food bank, but we're lucky that those kind of organisations are there to help people most in need.
Another issue that has come up in 2014, although it's been bubbling away for a long time, and is the M11. Just under 200 people at St John's a couple of weeks ago. Is this a key time? This is a key time for Harlow, isn't it? We're speaking on the week of the enterprise zone and more money. This is a key time for Harlow, isn't it?
The M11 Junction, I would argue, is probably one of the most important issues affecting Harlow for a generation, and it is absolutely essential that we have an extra junction for the future. It unlocks business, it will increase house prices, it will create thousands and thousands of jobs. I've been campaigning on this, I think, roughly since 2003, 2004, when I first put a card around every home. I wasn't even an MP then, but I was a parliamentary candidate. We have to have an extra junction. Sometimes you go to Stratford. It happened to me not so long ago because there was one little accident on the Hastingwood roundabout. It took me 3 hours from Stratford to get back to Harlow. Crazy. If you go to a town like Carlisle, which has exactly the same number of people in Harlow, roughly the same size, in the north of England, they have about 6 entrances. Basildon has 4 entrances. Harlow has 1. So we have to have an extra M11 junction, and since I've been in Parliament I've been campaigning for it. I've had debates on it, I've gone to see ministers about it, and Essex Council have now made it the #1 priority. I've just about to put a survey, in fact some of them have gone into Harlow homes already, to every home, because I want to hear what residents think about it. I want to ask them where they think the junction should be, and I want to ensure that we get the best solution for Harlow residents, that you get the proper infrastructure and that protects the environment. But at the end of the day, we have to have the extra junction if we're to get business growth, if we're to be a viable economy, and if we're to have a proper future.
In conclusion, in many ways, I'm doing a whistle-stop tour of the issues this week, and I was going to mention the challenges to Princess Alexandra Hospital, Atos. How we could discuss those now, but how do you manage your time in being able to keep campaigning on so many fronts?
Well, I'm a campaigning MP. I love campaigning. I'm a community MP. I try and do everything possible in Harlow all the time. I wake up in the morning, I think you've come here this morning, I've had a ginormous pint of coffee, which keeps me going. I couldn't do it without coffee, but I believe I've got to campaign on things that my residents care about, and that's why I had a go at ATOS in Parliament this week. I also, funny enough, did a debate with a very left-wing Labour MP, a joint debate, doesn't often happen, a Conservative and a Labour MP called Michael Meacher, last year, where we did a debate just about ATOS in Parliament, because I've been very unhappy about the service they give to my constituents. And really what I do is I reflect what residents write to me about. I get 200 or 300 emails a day. Not all of them from local residents, but many of them are. And I have surgeries regularly, whether it's open surgeries on Saturday mornings in Boardwalk or Stapletie or wherever it may be, but also appointment surgeries either at the Citizens Advice or the Enterprise Hub. I do school surgeries as well for parents, and I reflect the issues that people raise at me. That's my duty, and I have to, sometimes you have to campaign on a lot of different things, because you have to seize the momentum, and you have to, there are things that you can get the government to listen to. Just going back to the energy issue, because energy has been a live subject for the last few months, energy bills, the government are listening. And so that's why I've got the meeting on Monday, and so I've got to raise it when issues are current, because then you've got a chance that they might be able to change the law and help people with their energy bills. And I do the same with other subjects. Timing is really important as well.
Robert, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.